Welcome everyone to the second episode of Candid Kevin. It's a special program that I do to mark certain milestones on the channel. We recently crossed 800 subscribers, and I'm so grateful to all of you out there that support the channel, the ideas presented, and the experience that we all share here. And as part of that, I like to give back. I'd like to open up the floor to everyone in the community that is willing to participate. And I've received your questions, and we're just going to sit down and have a nice little relaxing time answering the questions and getting to know each other a little bit more. The first question up comes from Crazy. They write, "Hello Kevin, congrats on the 800 subscribers. The road to 1000 is looking bright. Thank you, Crazy. My question for this time is, if Mario Kart Tour was more of a standard racing game with no combos and point system, would you still be playing? Would you ever have played it, or even would you like it more?" Well, thank you for the question. It's a good one, and it's very thought-provoking because it really gets to the fundamentals of what makes Mario Kart Tour the game that it is. And the combo and point system really enhances the standard Mario Kart experience as we know it. Has the kind of elements that I use the analogy of Tetris to, or even something like Wii Sports, where you could just play indefinitely, improving your skill to achieve all-time new personal bests. And given the full range of characters that exist in the game and the amount of content with the courses, like imagine everything that's ever been released in Mario Kart Tour bundled together into a single Switch game. I think it could definitely be the best Mario Kart experience to date, if all that was structured to the full specifications of whatever system that it would launch on, whether that be Switch or whatever were to come down the line. If the combo system and point system wasn't in place and it was just a standard Mario Kart game, my typical experience with Mario Kart games in the past is that you play it a bunch when it's brand new, and then you kind of figure things out, and once that's all settled, there isn't a whole heck of a lot more to do. So you kind of drift away from it. And it's the tour system of Mario Kart where new content is delivered every 2 weeks that keeps us playing, right? I mean, that's the excitement of it. So between updated content every 2 weeks and having that indefinite personal best approach to Mario Kart Tour makes it so that it's a very engaging game over a long span of time. So if it was just a standard Mario Kart Tour title, I probably wouldn't still be playing it, but I would intermittently return to it just out of nostalgia and just the joy and the fun that the experience as a whole would have. But that would all be dispersed across time and not a continuous pattern of play in which I would venture on to other things here and there in between. As for if I ever would have played it, well, of course I would have played it, given the amount of content that's available in this game. It's certainly top-notch as far as Mario Kart standards go. We have the largest character selection pool, the largest track selection pool. Those two things are the primary driving points of the Mario Kart experience, and this title has that in spades. I don't say I would like it more if those things didn't exist, although definitely given the structure of Mario Kart Tour and how it plays into those gacha mechanics, there is a different kind of a balance that could exist that would promote myself liking it more than it exists in its current state. And another thing that wasn't even brought up in the question, but I really feel enhances the Mario Kart Tour experience, is the community. It might sound cliche because I'm not the only one that mentions it. The other content creators mention it. Other people in the chat mention it, but it really does enhance the experience overall. This is a game that I was introduced to at the start of the pandemic in 2020, and just having that positive social interaction with everyone over a hobby that we all enjoy has been really marvelous, and I think it's really enriched the lives of all of us out there, and that's what motivates us and excites us to keep playing the game ultimately. The next set of questions comes from Dark Shadows, and they write, for the first one, do you plan on participating in another episode of Cart Talk with StudFit and friends like you did last time? Or even an episode of The Rundown with StudFit? Similarly, do you plan on having guests in your videos? Well, it was a nice experience. That's his program, and he runs it as he sees fit. No pun intended there. And it's primarily open to his Super Stud members. He was very gracious to extend an invitation out to me. Being just a subscriber, I'm not a part of his membership tiers, but there was certainly some demand among his viewership to open the floor up to other content creators, and I was one of the ones that was being recommended to come on, and it was a fabulous experience because I really feel like I can present a different perspective to show the full spectrum of thoughts, ideas, and implementation of strategy that exists within Mario Kart Tour, what he does for pay-to-win players. And even, I mean, look, the information that his channel provides is useful for all the player kinds, but you kind of have to parse the information out and take out what applies to your specific situation, and then figure out how you're looking at it differently through the lens when what he's saying and presenting in his information may differ from what your personal experience is. I feel like in that episode we just scratched the surface in terms of the different perspectives and how they mesh together, because when I do this content here, I always talk about connecting the dots. And you know, if you think about a big plot or a matrix, right? You know, we're each a dot at these various points, and that's what our experience looks like. But there is an underlying set of systems and forces that interplay, right? So there's a reason why you are looking at what you're looking at, and why what I'm looking at looks different. And that it's not that Mario Kart Tour has systems designed specifically for, you know, StudFit or specifically for Kevin, right? It's the same system, but it's just being applied in different ways because we are in different positions in the game. And that's probably one of the things that fascinates me the most about this game and understanding of these systems in play. All that being said, you know, he has a whole panel of remarkably intelligent and charismatic people that go on. The possibility is always out there to go on the program once again, but there's nothing planned for doing that at this time. There's also not currently any plans to have other content creators on my videos, partially because of the way how I do the recordings. It's something where I record from one cell phone and I upload that to the computer and just put it all together. The editing process is fairly extensive for doing that, but that's all I have access to at this time. I don't have technology that can really take other people's feeds and then just being able to put it out much the way that he does for the Cart Talk episode. And then also finding the availabilities for everyone is often quite a challenge because we're all in different time zones and different walks of life. So it's always an obstacle to have that happen. What's ultimately important is that the community has a wealth and a freshness of ideas that's coming from all the various sources that exist out there, and we interact through this content as such. You know, one of the things that StudFit had mentioned to me is that, you know, he was totally comfortable sharing the floor with me on that Cart Talk, in part because of the dialogue that we've shared throughout time on our series of videos, in basically introducing ideas and working off of each other's ideas and feeding along that entire process, because that's where knowledge and information is not only shared but expanded on at an exponential rate. And I think that we've all had a very positive and beneficial impact on one another, and that's something that's truly remarkable about this community. Second question up is, considering that you have a healthy stash of rubies, would you consider doing a 1-10 pull, any pipe of your choice, for each tour that comes out? Well, this is actually an idea that I entertained a bit in the past, and I ultimately didn't feel comfortable with doing that. And the reason for not doing the YOLO pulls, I don't promote YOLO pulls here on the channel. They're certainly very entertaining to watch whenever anyone does them, quite frankly. But when I put my rubies to use, I like to know that I'm getting something tangible in the pipe. That's just my level of comfort and my approach to the pipes. When I was doing pipe pulls, I always share with everyone my strategy going in. I would have all of the contingencies mapped out so that nothing would surprise me when I would go to do them. It would just be kind of like the excitement and the joy of realizing all of the preparation that I would put into pulling on the pipe. And I know that's been greatly deprived of here on the channel, but there haven't been pipes that are really motivating me to pull and to really push my account forward. And this kind of situations that I want to avoid doing with the YOLO 10 pulls is just burning 45 rubies, getting a green pipe, and then you get 10 normals. What do you do then? Because you're into sunken cost fallacy, right? Your odds improve on the next pull, and suddenly then you're going past the budget, past what you want to do, and then maybe this is a pipe where when you're starting out, it's not one that you might want to spend 200 plus or perhaps even 400 rubies on if you have to go all the way down to the bottom to get that high-end value. So I'm very cautious with my rubies. I talk a lot about the gacha mechanics and how best to approach them. And I understand that there's a whole range of outlooks that can exist out there, so I never push onto anyone to implement the strategies that I do. It's just that, my personal approach is at the far extreme in terms of not pulling on the pipe. And I certainly recommend everyone out there pulls on the pipe more frequently than I do with my account. I've even characterized my strategy and where I'm at as cryogenically freezing the state of my account, right? I'm just basically adding on resource value, not going into anything, and that's melding my resources and my time with that of my overall strategy, and that which brings me excitement and joy in the game. And that's ultimately what I want to share with the messaging that I do here. It's not so much as a statement of saying like, or you should never pull on these pipes. No, I recommend pulling on many of these pipes, as you know from my various Should You Pull series, from the deep dives on the special pipe analysis and also the weekly spotlight pipes. It's more so to just have that complete understanding of what really brings you joy and happiness in this game, and also what is your resources budget like, and how sustainably can you apply those resources in your game for what you're specifically looking to target through these various pipes. And as long as you're doing that, it's a wonderful experience, and you are rising above the gacha, avoiding all of those predatory elements, the gambling side of this game that certainly, look, we want the developers to make money. I never tell anyone don't spend their money on the game. I'm very supportive of all of the whale and pay-to-win players that are out there, as well as all of the gold pass players. In fact, most of the folks watching along here have at least bought gold pass at some point in time, if not are a continuous subscriber of gold pass. So we want to see the developers get the support for that. It's not a statement about that whatsoever. It's just about doing it all responsibly. I want to see people be happy, and I don't want to see people be baited or cheated out of things because of perhaps not having the most balanced perspective that they should have going into that. And that's something that I stand up for greatly on the channel here. And from the feedback of everyone, it's really been helpful for, I'd say out of all the content that I do, I think the way that I've been able to help transform a great number of people's mindsets with regards to the pipe, and also having fun with the game, and maybe not taking some of these things too seriously while also being serious about the strategy part of it so that you're still executing and doing what you want to do, but in a manageable way. That's kind of the power of the ideas that we're doing here. Third question up is, what is your favorite typing in Pokemon? Congrats on a new record of subscribers, and thank you for the content. Well, thank you for the kind words and these 3 questions, Dark Shadows. I don't have a specific typing of an individual Pokemon that's my favorite. And in terms of my favorite type in the whole Pokemon series itself, that's strictly looking at it in the competitive sense, from the individual design elements of Pokemon, the specific designs. There's not one type where I just think aesthetically always looks better than other types. I do, when it comes to the design elements of Pokemon, I like the ones that look organic, that are more simple and not over designed, let's say, like too many markings or things that make them look like they're too far away from the natural inspiration from which they're all derived, since they are all derived from some form of inspiration, whether it's from out in nature, different kinds of mythology, or even just technology, right? There's a lot of ones that are based on technology. So but being that I do like a lot of the natural designs, certainly a lot of those fit into the normal typing category, or the water, grass, or fire types. Maybe some of the other types not so much, but to go along with the competitive mindset, which is what would my favorite type be? Well, certainly Steel type is my favorite, and it's probably not very close, and that's because of the defensive utility that type provides. Seldom is there a time where I won't have a team that has a Steel type, and usually that would be focused on a very extreme overloading kind of strategy, in which case I'm systematically attempting to remove things and play a certain pattern within the metagame itself. But when you're looking at forming one of these more balanced teams, or even whether it be defensive or offensive, rather even, Steel type is pretty mandatory just to have as a check to a variety of threats that exist in the game. The amount of resistances that the Steel typing possesses is remarkable for being able to check and pivot around various situations in competitive games. And what really differentiates the casual single player experience of a Pokemon title in the competitive battling scene is the switch, right? It's switching your Pokemon out from turn to turn, anticipating, predicting certain moves to come, and then adjusting your strategy accordingly, and then also predicting your opponent to predict your prediction. And that's where a lot of the metagame and the mind games and the skill comes into play, that makes Pokemon battles of the competitive kind so enthralling. Next set of questions comes from Keon, and they ask, personally, which of the Kong alts is your favorite? I'm going to guess that means the 5 Kongs that are available in the game, but none of them have alts. They're each individual characters. So we have Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Funky Kong, Dixie Kong, and Donkey Kong Jr. Some people might view Donkey Kong Jr. as an alt of Donkey Kong, but within the Donkey Kong series canon, they're different characters. In fact, Donkey Kong Jr. is actually the father of Donkey Kong, the modern day hero of that franchise, because the grandfather of the current Donkey Kong was the original Donkey Kong from the arcade game, and that's now Cranky Kong, right? So Donkey Kong Jr. is the son of Cranky Kong, and then also the father of the modern Donkey Kong. So, but out of those 5 that are available in the game now, which of them is my favorite? Well, it is Diddy Kong, in terms of who I personally like the most, but in terms of it's different, right? Because Mario Kart Tour, I talk about this on a lot of my videos, is that the framework of the game doesn't provide it so that there's even a close competitive relevance for some of these things that we're using, right? So like Diddy Kong hasn't been in ranked mode in nearly 2 full years. That's almost 100 weeks that he hasn't been in ranked mode, which is just, it's mind-blowing. And I don't want to say it's deliberate in any way, it's just that his track coverage is so confined that they're looking to, because all the tracks that they put into ranked mode in the game are based on, what they're looking to promote usage out of the various pipes that have come out recently, the various packs that have been out recently, and also exposure to keep the game friendly enough for a free-to-play player, so that they're not just a very small collection of pay-only players. Because in such a state as that, I talk a lot about the health of the economy, the ecological ecosystem of Mario Kart Tour, and that's not a system that only exists with predators. Isn't a very healthy system, and it's not going to last very long. So it is very important. While free-to-play players are not relevant to the developer's bottom line for this game, they are important for injecting enthusiasm and bolstering the size of the community, so that we can all share in this experience in various ways, and that enhances the enjoyment and success of pay-to-win players, because it means something more if more people are playing the game, right? I mean, if not many people are playing the game, what is all that success actually translating to? So a little bit of a side tangent there, but basically, I mean, okay, Donkey Kong Jr. has had the most tracks in the last year. So I do like racing with Donkey Kong Jr. mostly because he's the only one that they've given real legitimate track coverage to. But putting him up against Dixie Kong, I definitely prefer Dixie Kong as a character more than Donkey Kong Jr. So, but Dixie Kong's coverage and the support of her coverage has been dropped quite a long time ago. The last new track that she was really brought in on that I was excited for was the RMX Choco Island 1 RT. That was my 1 year playing Mario Kart Tour retrospective that I provided here. And since then, I mean, look, she's been in the token shop for free during the New Year's 2022 tour, so I don't expect her value is going to go anywhere. So the only one who's really going to present future value is DK Jr., and that's, as long as they're willing to carry the support for that. Will they introduce, another one at some point in time? I always say your guess is as good as mine on that. Second question is, if King K. Rool would come to the game, would you invest heavily into him like you do with the Kongs? Well, I would pull for King K. Rool. Being it's a new character, from that series, I would support that for sure. But King K. Rool as a character isn't one, I like the Kong family of characters, right? Like the heroes of that series. So it would be like, if you're a Mario fan pulling for Bowser, right? It's like you're going up against Bowser. So, I definitely what would get me the most excited would be any kind of a Kong driver here. King K. Rool would be cool to have in the game for sure, but personally, I wouldn't put the same kind of attention into King K. Rool as I do for the other Kongs, and also part of it would depend then on its track coverage, the skill, a number of things, and how that would fit into the larger Kong strategy overall. Next question is, what do you think was a better year for the game, 2020 or 2021? This is a fantastic question, and it's because there's no decisive answer for this, right? 2020 wins in some regards, and 2021 wins in other regards, and I'll just go into that briefly here. And 2020 was a real magical year for the game, whether they realized it at the time or not, but having this be an experience that could really be shared and interacted with for players during the pandemic and keep people together was huge. I mean, the community was booming during 2020, and there was, new drivers, new alts for all the characters. I mean, basically, if you were a fan of anything, 2020 had it. Shortcomings aside, so see, that's where 2020 falls apart compared to 2021. The game is better than ever now. I mean, they have today's challenge pipe, the total points challenge. So many things have been, improved upon with the experience of Mario Kart Tour, so that if you're just starting to play now, I mean, it's loads better than it was back, a year or two ago, unquestionably. You can take your account so far in such a short amount of time now. It's really quite remarkable to think about, the way that we had to do things, over a year ago. But all that being said, a lot of the exciting elements that, it's like new characters, which, they've maybe started on with the new characters a little bit more. We have Charge and Chuck coming in. We had Kamek, so that's 2 now in the last 6 months or so. If they can keep that trend forward, a new character every like 4 to 6 months, I think that's the sweet spot. Kind of like a seasonal or like a like a bi-yearly introduction of some character that is really beloved among the community. That's a way forward to really, maintain the engagement and the excitement of all of us. But yeah, I mean, we look at the support for some of these characters, like, it's hard to overlook. We have the Wario versus Waluigi tour, and just like they did to Donkey Kong, there's no Wario alt. The last one is still from July 2020. Right? There's a lot of characters that deserve the love and attention. Once the support is dropped for a lot of these characters, people lose enthusiasm and they go on to other things. It's not something that they want to keep doing. And that's totally understandable and relatable for a number of people out there. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think that Nintendo could provide more balanced character diversity without sacrificing the things that make them a lot of money. There's a game plan that can exist, and I've talked about it quite a bit here, so I'm not going to go on a big diatribe about that here, but I do think increased character diversity of new characters would go a long way in exciting the player base and bringing out some of these players that have fallen off back into the swing of things, so that they can experience all of the wonderful new improvements that they've brought to the game. Because unquestionably, Mario Kart Tour is better now than it was before. It's just not feeling that way if you are a fan of certain characters and aspects of it, and they're no longer very present in the game. Next set of questions comes from epointer226YT, and she writes, what is your take on driver, kart, and glider usefulness rating systems that often underrate things because of aspects no one wants to admit are valid enough? This includes the downplay of the potentially powerful brand new items. I know why people think this, but it doesn't mean it's perfect. The overexposure of items in the pipes hogging ratings. Credit to Kevin Garrett for this thought. We'll touch on that in a moment. Over upplay, if that's even a word, items with level 3 and 6 as their unlocked tracks being treated like they're tracks not just accessible at all, but accessible to everyone regardless, and completely ignoring the majority who can't afford to take that driver, kart, or glider to level 3 or 6. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. There's another question, but let me go back to the beginning and then I'll catch up with things here. So the usefulness of these rating systems for drivers, karts, and gliders, there's a lot of them out there. I talk a lot about them on the channel. We have Tabor's rankings that are out there, and those are the ones that contribute towards StudFit's Rundown series that we've already mentioned in a previous question. And there's also Antilev's rankings. Many different players out there and contributors to the community at large have various ranking systems that they put out. Each are very valuable, such as the Bam and Gerbs spreadsheet that looks at your individual inventory. It doesn't provide a tour-by-tour ranking system per se, but when you plug in your inventory, it will tell you the power of those items in your inventory specifically, which is valuable in another context. So where I stand with all of these different resources and tools that exist, for the ranking systems out there is that there's no magic bullet out there. There's no one that's going to say like, this is the definitive list that everyone, you know, has to adhere to. And that's the beauty of this game. And it doesn't take away from anything that these wonderful tools provide us with, because they each provide us with a wealth of information. And we should be paying attention to them for, you know, specific reasons that are relevant to your situation. So it's understanding, you know, what are these tools telling us, and what's the most efficient and optimal way for me to approach looking at these tools, these ranking systems, and applying them to my own outlook in the game, right? Just because something is the #1 ranked driver or cart doesn't mean that you need to invest into it, right? And that's where you put the information together by looking at all of them and not turning a blind eye to all of them, and not only looking specifically at one specific one as, you know, perhaps part of a confirmation bias, like, you know, looking for something to be good and trying to find, you know, an answer for it to be good. The straight fact is you can make anything good in the game that you want, right? You know, that's how I've founded my whole account. I've had, you know, a lot of success with that. I've shared that with everyone. I hear the comments, the successes that you have applying the ideas that, you know, I share here, and hearing your application of them is so inspiring. And I love to hear all of the feedback that you provide me in regards to that. In terms of, you know, overrating and underrating things, look, each one is looking at things like, for example, Tabor's rankings are looking at things in a vacuum, right? So that's if you don't have anything in your inventory, and if you're just adding, you know, that one specific thing that it's looking at, like, what does that do for you? That's not taking into account any kind of overlap with other items that may also be ranked very highly in the rankings at any given time. And I like what Tabor's rankings do, because that vacuum approach is very valuable, since no one's going to have the same inventory. If you suddenly start providing stats into the algorithm or metrics into the algorithm that take into account like overlap with other top 10 items or just something arbitrarily like that, then you're going to be skewing the information, you know, out of that general sense that can be very valuable. It's only going to present an accurate picture for people who specifically have that situation, and that's unbeknownst to the entire public, unless you're really like looking at his specific algorithm and figuring out, okay, well, what did he do here that gives it that ranking, right? So that would be very misleading. And you know, he's extremely responsible with what he does, and always very methodical. So Tabor's rankings, top notch to follow, but understanding the limitations of that. Like, you know, I know a lot of people, like, this is earlier last year, but like, you know, like White Yoshi, Lederhosen, you know, Luigi, you know, a lot of times these drivers ended up in like the top 15 or whatever. And it's like, it'd be like empty calories or fluff, because the track value that those items were providing wasn't anything that you couldn't get with other elite skills that you're probably investing into. So that's where you have to implement, you know, something like BAM and Jerb spreadsheet, or, you know, other resources that are available for tracking your own coverage. You could even do it yourself. I mean, I mostly do it myself, and I use the BAM and Jerb's resource to look for specific things that overplay. Maybe the hypotheticals is the beauty of using that, because you could put things in that don't actually exist in your current game state and then see what would it do, right? And that's a very powerful tool to possess. So that's where you can kind of gain a fuller understanding of like, okay, so in Tabor's rankings, in a vacuum, this is, you know, an extremely valuable item, but what if I add it to my inventory? Would it be as good then? As for downplaying potentially powerful and brand new items, this is something that they've tweaked in the algorithm. I've talked to Tabor about it. You know, he's always looking to fine tune and tweak and improve his algorithm. And they've done that. You know, they've put more of a focus in the last few months compared to like a year or two ago. When the rankings originally started, it was more of that static kind of like Dry Bones Gold, Pink Gold Peach were like always the best driver, and now you see more variability going on, and that's because put the focus more on, there's a recency bias, right? Because like what's been good lately, it's like the best predictor of a future event is, the most recent data point that you have, right? So, and that's been extremely valuable if you follow along and have seen the changes that's presented, things that have gone up in the rankings as a result of that, things like DK Jr., Cat Toad, Baby Mario Koala, Rosalina Tanuki, these things have, skyrocketed up compared to where they may have started out in the rankings. And that's as a result of that, paying attention to the recency of things. Now, you can take that a step further, perhaps, which, I'll probably save this answer more for a Turtle Dude's question, since I skimmed ahead and saw that there's relevance to this with that question. But, you can project futures in this game, and maybe that's the future of analysis in Mario Kart Tour. It's something that I've provided here on the channel in finding best fits to past similar items, and then saying like, look folks, this is what happened with this other item that I anticipate with good reason will, follow a similar pathway. So this is where you can expect to see the value come in. And there's even greater depths of analysis where that could go, but it would really take a huge collaborative effort to do that. So I understand kind of like the sight of seeing some of the shortcomings, because like if you only look at one specific thing, you're going to say, oh well, that's not right, and that's not right, and that's true, it's true, but we can't just use like, there's no perfect system out there, right? So you can't say something that's overwhelmingly wonderful and positive for you to make use is no good to use, because like it doesn't fit a specific situation. You have to understand the specific situation and bring that context into the tool, right? And that's what makes it a good objective tool, right? Because it's applying the subjective, to the objective. And as for the overexposure of items in the pipe hogging the rankings, okay, so let me, since you referenced what I said in the chat, a month or so ago, let me just clarify for the viewing audience who probably missed it, since it was just, it was a single conversation that we had, was that one of the pipes had come out. It was like a special pipe, and it was ranked extraordinarily well. And for most, it was one of the gold pipes. And for most players, this pipe wasn't really doing much for them because all the items were old. But, they did possess value. Like if you're just starting your account now, like these 14% high-end gold pipes, it's just like remarkable what you can do with your account with that, right? But it's like, if you've pulled on all the past gold pipes, that gold pipe has close to zero value. I mean, like they sprinkle in that one new glider, right? That will get the whales to pull. But if you're gold pass only, you're reluctant to pull on that because you're like, geez, I already have these things at a high level. Or at least, a strong enough level that it's going to be inefficient to use your rubies to pull for them, because you'd have to pull, 3 or 5 of them to level them up next, right? And then it's like, you're just fishing, it's the bottomless pit, going for that non-spotlight item. Huge risk, and you're right for not going in on a situation like that. And then, I think one of the things that Tabor uses in his rankings is pipe rarity. So the rare items are in the pipe, like for example, like that Ramby Runner was only ever in a pipe once. It's come back in a pack once, and that's it. So that's an extremely rare item. If that was in a pipe compared to, like the gold crane or something, right? It's been in like a million pipes. So comparatively speaking, in Tabor's rankings, the one with the Ramby Runner would rank higher on his algorithm because of the rarity of items. But what I had proposed in my line of text in that conversation was that perhaps the commonness of some of these items should be offsetting the rarity, right? Because it's like, the #1 best pipe ever, and it's like, all the top players don't really want to pull on it all that much because they have all the items, right? They're all level, 5, 6, or 7, right? It's certainly something that I think could be adjusted, or perhaps not even like a new category, but just a tweaking of that rarity component so that it balances out the commonness of some of the items versus the rarity of others. Because If you assess, a ruby's amount to obtaining some of these non-spotlight items, I mean, to even have, like a 3/4 chance to obtain like the brand new glider you see when I do the deep dive pipe analysis, it's like, 400 plus rubies, 500 plus rubies, sometimes a lot worse if the odds aren't good. So, it's a precarious situation, and that's not something that can be like tangibly obtained in an amount of rubies that will provide any kind of a return on your account. Not at all, right? This is like, that's the pay to win move, and that's why they include those items in these pipes to get, all of the players to pull. So there's something for everyone in the pipe. But even still, I do, something gets lost in translation. I agree on that, but I like the way how he has the rankings. I think it would only require a real minor tweak to better portray that, considering that situation that so many players find themselves in. As for giving credit for the items that already have tracks for the level 3 and level 6 unlocks, when most players in fact cannot achieve that track coverage from the state of having, the driver leveled up all the way to 6 to have the full coverage. My answer to that is simple. Like, okay, you might think, here's a guy, he's free to play, that myself, and he's showing us the value of these things, like fully maxed out. Like, what gives, right? Like, that's the most constrained, restricted form of gameplay is free to play. Like, and I share the same approach as, like, a pay to win player like StudFit or Carlos in regards to, like, what can this obtain you, when it's fully maxed out. And the truth is, because I recommend here on the channel to meld your rubies usage with that of your ticket acquisition and usage, right? So that way you are not overextending yourself, and that's what I call leaked resource value, right? Like, if you're pulling on the pipe too much and you're just collecting these level 1s that look nice when you scroll down the list on your device to see, what's in your inventory, but like, they're not being used. And if they're being used, they're just level 1. They're not going anywhere. They're going to become a liability at some point for your account, especially if you don't have the tickets to match with powering them up as your account charts upwards. You want those items to continue to carry you, and then you build up the resources and then you use them, and then that's how you continue to move forward with success in the game. Certainly there are other approaches, but that's the most sustainable. Look, I'm always talking about how to make this an enjoyable, balanced, sustainable experience for everybody. So there's more than one way to be successful, but that's the way I recommend doing it, because it's the safest. And as such, I'm going to always look at the level 3 and the level 6 upgrades for things, because I would strongly recommend paying attention and utilizing the value of those things, because those level 3 and level 6 unlocks have immediate value. The devs are very, very deliberate in doing so. And in fact, over half of the items that are brought to the game have that level 6 track unlock as a ranked exposure right in its initial tour. So if you don't do that initially, you're losing initial value that can be quite substantial. So they do that intentionally to get you to burn those resources, but you can use that to your advantage and save your resources for longer when they're trying to bait you. But you know better, you're not going to be taking the bait on that. You're going to save it to make maximum use of that, and then you're avoiding all the overlap that these items accrue over time anyway. There's a real way to play the entire system, and that's something that I share with all the content that I do here. And the last question here is, these are only examples. What do you make of these ratings problems? Because problems like this are essentially causing unintentional misinformation. Also, not mentioning these systems completely ignores second shelves, which are extremely helpful to those who don't have a top shelf in something. Okay, so two things here. Unintentional misinformation. That exists everywhere, right? I mean, it's nothing is unique to Mario Kart Tour with that. And the best thing that we can do to combat that is, is through, broadening the understanding of the player base, the community. I learned so much from all the other content creators, and I'm sure that's returned, when folks watch my content here as well. We all improve each other's standing and understanding of the game. And there's never looking down on misinformation, old information, because it's not so much that it's misinformation, it's misused information, which is taking something someone says out of context, right? And that's what I always talk about, that individualized situation. My videos could be like 8 hours long, all of them going through, if you're this type of player, that type of player. I can't do that. But what I do is I draw so much awareness to that, and that's the way. That's the way of Mario Kart Tour, and I can't show everybody the way, and I don't try to show everybody the way. And it's just that thinking. You want to be thinking the right things, and it's applying thought in the right way. And you might arrive at a completely different answer than I do, and that's the point of this, right? It's not like, Kevin Garrett tries to tell other people how to be Kevin Garrett. Nope, it's not what we do here, folks. As for the second shelves, this is something that is more relevant to the free-to-play experience. I talk about it a little bit here on the channel. Don't make a big deal out of it. Usually just about the calculations and how that applies to scoring potential. And also looking at Diddy Kong and seeing, what future buffs could he get based on that. But aside from that, there isn't a huge amount of relevance and processing power and thought that goes into that in the community, because that's largely irrelevant for most people who are playing the game. It's fun for people to use top shelf items, and top shelf is designed so that you constantly have to get new items, and that's where the paying mechanics and the revenue is generated by the devs. Right? So, and look, it's too little bit of a return for me to delve deeper than I already do into the second shelf and bottom shelf. That's more just understanding and context that comes in and out. But I agree, second shelf does need more attention, but based on the kind of returns that anybody looking at that is going to get in terms of how valuable that information is for anyone, even themselves who are looking at it, is not really worth going through all the work to do that. Next question is from Lemon, and they ask, are you open to a question like this for your Candid Kevin question submission? Rapid fire word association. That sounds like fun. Let's do it. First words sound that come to mind when I say Nintendo memories. Special pipes. Scam. We're doing it real here, folks. 800 subscribers. Gratitude. Kongs. Fun. NSM star. Smart. NSM is not spending money. It's a clan, a tag that's been come about from the Discord group. If you're not a member of our Discord, I'll put a link in the description below. Blue pipe, fake, banana, Kongs. Next city, Cairo? I said that with a lot of doubt. We've been waiting for Cairo, right? It's been on the, it was on the initial loading screen, so we know, like, look, that's developed, it's in the books. When's it gonna come? And look, the Cairo might not even be my #1 favorite city that I want to see come to the game, but it's always the best guess, especially considering that it may be more of a spring or a summer themed city that we see coming out next. Mario Kart 9. This, I'm going to say, like, look, I think Mario Kart Tour is Mario Kart 9. I don't know if Nintendo considers it as such, but I don't think that the next Mario Kart will be called Mario Kart 9. I think it should be called something that distinguishes the product, right? Like Mario Kart Double Dash, for example. I think the number is a little too sanitary, or it's lacking some kind of character or substance, or kind of like hype appeal. I like to see, each Mario Kart title to have, what it's about, like a core value to it that sets it apart from the other ones in the series too. Since Mario Kart fans are loyal and they still play, the old versions of Mario Kart. So, next new item, clueless. Look, I'm not a huge Mario Universe fan, so I don't know, what they could use. Certainly, like, there are items that have existed in the past, like the feather, or like the Boo invisibility one, but and many others too. But like Chain Chomp, I think. So that's kind of like the Bullet Bill replaced the Chain Chomp, right? So your guess is better than mine in that case. And we have 1,000 subs. For that, I will just say thankful. If the community gets this channel over the 1,000 subscriber mark, I'd be enormously thankful for that. Oh, there's one more. Your best character sound impressions. Well, I'd probably have to go with DK or Diddy. So for DK we have and for Diddy it's we're gonna go with the DK one. I did better on, so we're gonna go DK. The Diddy one kind of sounded a little bit like a werewolf call, so that was a fun set of questions. I enjoyed that. Next question is from Bolt. He writes, what retro tracks do you most want to appear in MKT, and what makes them your choices? Do you have fond memories of them for any particular reasons? Okay, so retro tracks, what I would like to say is something like DK Jungle or DK Mountain. DK Mountain I have the most amount of nostalgia for, from Double Dash. It was my favorite track in my favorite Mario Kart game. So you would say, it sounds like KG is saying that he wants DK Mountain in the game, but truthfully, like, look, okay, these tracks being brought to the game don't mean that a new character theme to them will be introduced, right? We had DK Summit, no new DK character. We had Penguin Toad, right? Penguin Toad got the DK track. And we had Wario Shipyard without a new Wario character. So the track conferring any kind of a character coming in, let me take a step back. So the character for me is far and away the number one thing, okay? And then the track is secondary, because it wouldn't be that in a normal Mario Kart experience, kind of going back to what Crazy's question was about. It's that framework of Mario Kart Tour, and that it's more fun to have the top shelf, to have good loadouts, that you have a level for, that you can, grind the frenzy for in a reasonable amount of time. Not driving with a middle shelf driver, right? And if they don't provide the support with, an appropriate character for that you're invested into or wanting to invest into, then the track has a completely different feel. And that's vastly different than it is from other Mario Kart games, where you race a track and enjoy a track because of the layout, the specifics of that track, not anything to do with the other mechanics for obtaining a greater score on that track. So that's why I bring that into the equation here. So in a way, what I like to see in Mario Kart Tour is something I haven't seen before yet, right? A track I haven't raced on. It's why I greatly appreciate the Super Circuit tracks that come to the game. Not only does the Mario Kart Tour dev team have a particular skill with translating these Super Circuit GBA tracks into Mario Kart Tour, upscaling them to the HD, and also accounting for the different elevational differences to really accentuate what was originally like a very flat and it's a creative, imaginative tracks with beautiful settings that they implement beautifully in HD with Mario Kart Tour, and making it all that it could have been had the developers of that title had access to the hardware that's available to us on these different iOS and Android devices, right? Next question up is from UWU, and they write, I have a question about the frenzy action in Mini Turbo. At first, the most common practice, or what I have heard of, is hold the drift during frenzy, and when it ended, it can release a Ultra Mini Turbo to gain more points, because all kinds of Mini Turbo actions don't count in frenzy. But recently, I found out other people said that mini turbo still counts in Frenzy, but it states as Frenzy Action instead of mini turbo. Are you aware of this problem? Which one do you think is correct and gain more points? 1, hold the drift till the end to have an ultra mini turbo, or 2, do mini turbo as possible during Frenzy, and if mini turbo and Frenzy states as Frenzy Action instead of mini turbo, are they the same score as normal? Well, I will take the last part of that question first because it is highly relevant, and that is that there is a difference, quite clearly actually. Frenzy Action has a base point of 1, and mini turbo has a base action point of 5. So right there, you're losing out if you do Frenzy Action as opposed to just a mini turbo, but that's just the basic mini turbo, not the ultra mini turbo, which has a base action of 30 points. So, I mean, we're talking a significant difference here. And then, okay, so what's the correct way to look about this? Well, what's going on in the game mechanics is that when you perform a mini turbo during Frenzy, it provides you with that Frenzy Action, right? So it's not giving you the credit for the mini turbo, but the Frenzy Action. That's what you get by when you're on your device and you're tapping. It gives you a Frenzy Action. So it's the same exact thing. You don't have to mini turbo through it. You could be holding your turbo with one finger and tapping with another finger, and you'll get the best of both worlds. And that's what is recommended to do. That's what the top players do. And you might be wondering, well, if you get credit for the mini turbos as Frenzy Actions, could you outperform what you get from tapping on the screen, right? And the answer is you can, but it's highly unlikely. So it's actually more likely that you're going to underperform than overperform. When you're tapping during Frenzy, you get 12 Frenzy Actions. And if you maximize the mini turbo, like ultimate skill mode, you just go unconscious, you're perfect with it. If the track layout supports it also, right, you're not hitting an invisible wall or something, then you can get 13. So you could get an additional action by doing mini turbos instead of tapping, which would confer a greater benefit, because although you might say, well, it's 1 point versus 30 points, but you have to factor in all the combo points that go onto it, right? So combo points max out with the top shelf glider at 45 points per action. So, I mean, you want the combo as opposed to the quality of the action itself. That's always going to win, hands down. Not to mention the bonus points that you get from the level of your top shelf items as well. So it's even more than the difference of that, but just to be complete with my answer. So I would recommend to do the tapping though and holding the mini turbo, because that's going to get you a very consistent maximum score. Maybe I shouldn't say maximum, I should say just below maximum score. And for those very, very rare occasions when you could get the extra action, it's not going to pay off in the long run, considering that you're going to have so many situations where you're getting less than if you're holding your mini turbos. Great question. Next one up is from Rob Wills, and he says, not sure if anyone has asked this yet, but what is the plan for all of your rubies if, for example, in the next 6 to 12 months time, there's still no Kong DK alt? It doesn't have to be DK. Look, actually DK isn't even my preferred Kong out there. Diddy Kong is #1. And certainly, you know, a new Kong, such as Cranky Kong, would far and away exceed a DK alt. But, you know, we'll take any form that we can get, essentially. On the horizon, surely you have to pull on something to keep your account from dropping below tier 51. We're going to talk about that. When the next uncapped ticks received get lower. So what Rob is talking about there is that if I drop below tier 50, then I'm going to be getting less uncapping tickets for my reward thresholds, right? That information is available online if you're not sure about it. What else will make you want to pull? Example like you did with the Kamek set. Okay, so if how do I go about this? where I'm at this point in time in the game is different than when I pulled for Kamek. I'm going to start at the end and I'll take it backwards, okay? When I pulled for Kamek, that was still, that was a year after the last, anything Kong had been brought to the game. So, if things went, if there was something at the back end of the year, that would have been an enormous event, not just for myself. There's a lot of Kong fans out there. Many of them are big spenders in the game. Many of them have left the game, but they would most definitely come back if the support was there for it. But we're in a different place now. Like it's almost 2 full years since that support has been there. And if that's hard for anyone out there to understand, just think about it in the context of what you do. If you play for just like the maximum potential in the game, like just focusing on the skill, you don't care about the character, it might be hard to understand this then. And that's okay, because look, but I like to bring everybody into the fold, right? Like I've spent most of my time in gaming as a competitive minded player, right? So but I approach Mario Kart Tour from both the casual and a competitive side. The strategy is competitive application of a casual mindset. Okay, that's how I would classify what I do. And I don't tell other people to do that here, but certainly if you follow along and you do similar to what I do, then that's the classification that you would share with me in that. But there was stronger enthusiasm, and also like look, Kamek was the #1 thing. So like it was so easy for me to vicariously feel in the moment for Kamek. Like I was thriving off everyone else's enthusiasm. Like Sammy D's reaction to that over on Kart Life was top notch. So it's like just watching his content, it was like, yes, this is like made me feel like this is the thing that I want, even though it really wasn't. It wasn't on the top of my list. And that's why I always said too, folks, I've said in the past, before that even happened, I said, like, people often ask me, like, what do I want to see come to the game if it's not a Kong? And I always say, whatever everybody else wants to say. I want to see people be happy, honestly, So for Kamek, that came very naturally. For Charge and Chuck, it's not on that level of Kamek, So what would make Charge and Chuck that thing, right? That Kamek was? Well, I mean, there's a number of things. The set, right? The set that it comes with, you want to like all of the items in play, right? Like I really liked the Dream Glider, the Broom Cart. That's still controversial because the hitbox. I could go into a whole spiel about hitbox. I do think that the hitbox equation needs to be tweaked a little bit because the Zoom Broom is ranked way too favorably in terms of hitbox. I'll just go into a quick little side thing here, in that the verticality of the cart gives it favor within the algorithm, but in practice, and I practice this a lot because a lot of times I'm using like the middle shelf and the bottom shelf cards that we referenced in other questions. So I see direct application of these things more commonly than maybe your top player or your paying player would see, because they have access to a lot of good favorable cards. So it's maybe not as monumental of a decision for them in these situations. Like the one example I'll give is the cucumber versus the carrot cart. I had that for Ninja Hideaways T. They were both in the middle shelf, and it's like the cucumber cart, a nice size hitbox according to the algorithm, better than the carrot cart. And I did dozens and dozens and dozens of runs, and this is when I was really grinding out the ranked mode, right, with each cart. And not one time did a coin box with the cucumber cart get a better coin purse than did the carrot cart. The carrot cart was tremendous, but the hitbox algorithm does not tell you that. It's the width. The width needs to factor more greatly into the algorithm. Something between 2x width to 3x width would probably be appropriate for what you can actually experience and practice. Side tangent aside, it's also the aesthetics, right? So aesthetically, I thought the Zoom Room was pretty cool, right? Certainly it's unique, and it's like I almost wanted to support that because it gives them a pathway forward for perhaps introducing more bike-themed carts that have a lot of nostalgia and a lot of fan base for it out there. The charge and chuck cart is a little bit controversial. I personally find it a bit repulsive, but I understand the enthusiasm and excitement for it, and it does look like it has that massive sized hitbox. So like if that's what you're playing for, that's offering additional excitement. But you know, I look at the cart and I'm like, boy, that's a detractor in this case, because it doesn't really go along with, you know, like let's say if it gets tracks that you know, the characters that I like, it covers for. It's not really an aesthetically pleasing cart. At the end of the day, you might just say, okay, well, the cart is just for value. But it's like, if I look back at my last year's history of playing Mario Kart Tour, I've almost personified the Rambi Runner as being like a character. It's like the character we didn't have. And thankfully, the dev team was cognizant enough of the following of that and gave it tremendous value. I mean, that is like the driver we didn't have in 2021 for the Kong. So, yeah, I mean, it would have to be like, so what would it take to get me to pull? Community excitement, like this thing that like people really want, like, you know, like even if it's not like I want Cranky Kong, like that's like numero uno. There's not even like, also the Diddy Kong alt too, but like beyond something Kong, there's nothing like, it's like 1 to 11, right? The top 10 would like all be that, but reasonably speaking, and I don't even want that many things in the game that's for the specific thing that I enjoy, right? It's just like, it would be nice to have something, you know, after a year of playing. Like, look, you know, I've supported your product through my activity at least, but also, you know, many players out there are supporting the game financially who do have fandom for these characters. It's like, show them the support. It's the least you can do, right? And it will, you know, the excitement bulges when all the characters are in play and can be had. So I would categorize the state of my account now as cryogenically frozen, and I don't see much thawing that in the future. But I mean, the beauty of Mario Kart Tour is that at any time they can do something that just totally knocks us off our chairs. So while I say there's nothing in the horizon, that just makes that the moment when that could happen, it could be soon, it could be far away or never. It does make it that much more exciting when it does happen, right? That's kind of like the suspense factor of it. And as for the falling below tier 51, well, I have a lot to talk about, and this is part of my normal content. So if you are subscribed, you're going to be hearing about this, you know, through the content series. But there's different ways to go about playing ranked mode, right? There's playing ranked mode, always trying to maximize for the rewards, right? And that's something that I did with my account from the beginning of time till, you know, around the second anniversary tour, where I made it to tier 57. That was my high water point. And then there was just a moment that came about where I said, okay, I need to put, you know, a better perspective of this from my own personal situation, so that I can better enjoy and share the knowledge, experience, the ideas, all of that. Keep it all going, right? That's what we're all about here, is keeping it rolling. And for me, that was taking a step back, and you know, but the mind never stops going with that. So I made observations when I took a step back, in that I would notice that my ranked groupings would be automatic on some weeks after not performing, like just like leaving it, like just get the stars and you're done. You know, like very minimalistic gameplay. It's actually easier, less competitive. This all goes to the content that I provided, Resource Masterclass. Some of the information is a little bit outdated, as I've said, but the core fundamentals of those ideas still stand, even amidst the vast changes that developers have made to the ranking system that we've detailed in part here. And that is that if you're constantly trying to maximize, you're going to hit a wall in terms of the resources, and then it's going to be a hard slope down. And that hard slope down, when you take a step back, it exists initially, right? So I went from tier 57 to tier 55, tier 54, and it's, you know, practically automatic some weeks to, you know, get first place in ranked mode. It's just like, you know, 10, 15 minutes in ranked mode and you're done first place. You would never find that maximizing everything. And I don't maximize everything anymore, because there's just the need and excitement that's there. Like I said, like the developers, like they don't owe anyone anything, not even their paying players, but they owe them certainly more than they'd owe a free-to-play player. But they ought to, that's the word that I use, because it's reflective of the long-term health and benefit of their product. Okay, so this is not looking at a specific person, specifically me, specifically you, but their product. Like, we're part of a demographic, right? And if you're losing certain demographics, you are losing on the amount of activity that you're generating, which the players have discovered. There was a thread on Reddit that was shared to me. I can't recall the author of it, but they discovered that the tokens obtained during these rally tours was 15% less. So there's been at least a 15% decline in the player base, and that's also factoring in that everybody's Coinbox drivers are now higher level than it was back when they were looking at this data in the first place. So like, they have lost players, and that information we can find. There's smart people out there that really care about this game, smarter and care about it more than I do. Okay, and that kind of approach inspires me to keep doing what I do and to keep improving what I do. So, but I mean, having that support in the game for the characters and the players who go in for those characters, and making sure that the tracks can be enjoyed. And it's not about like making the game easy and accessible to everybody. Like, there's still, like, you can actually be more revenue generated. Like, you can make things even more difficult by making things more friendly in a way, just by tweaking things. So that's highly specific stuff that we don't need to go into here. Next question is from Super Rainyaw, and he says, except for new Kongs or a Kong alt, who is your most wanted character for MKT? I just said that it's whoever everybody else wants, really. It's that level of excitement that exists in the entire community is what gives me the most excitement in regards to something that's outside of like my specific desire. What are your thoughts on Super Monkey Ball? I don't know much about it, honestly. I've seen screenshots and clips of it. Was it originally a GameCube title? Sounds about right. But it's not just like any kind of monkey game or something is going to be of interest to mine. It's the specific character, right? And it's like when we look at like DK, Diddy, for example, like they're highly expressive. Like they're given personalities in their animations, their mannerisms that make them fun or like cool or like strong to use in the game and the system that they're brought to the game for. So maybe that exists for Super Monkey Ball, but at face value it doesn't for me. And excluding MKT, even though I doubt it would be your favorite, what's your favorite video game? Well, it definitely would be Pokemon related. Currently I am just absolutely floored and in love with Pokemon Legends Arceus. I released my preview of that game and the initial thoughts for why I thought that would be a groundbreaking experience for the series, and it is that groundbreaking experience. It's not a perfect game, so if you're more critically minded, if Pokemon isn't of specific interest to you, those flaws may be more apparent. However, what it does for the Pokemon series is enormous in terms of like the world building and also the gameplay, completely transforming it into something that is so natural and down to earth and intuitive. So many superlatives that I can add to why Legends Arceus is the best Pokemon title, and really the pathway forward for all Pokemon titles moving forward. Specifically talking about what were the best games in that series and why I enjoyed them. I love the Gen 3 games, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. top-notch quality, pretty much, you know, masters of the Game Boy, being that it was the 3rd generation on the Game Boy. Granted, this was the advanced system, so it moved beyond, but the hardware was still relatively similar to the native form of the original Game Boy that Red and Blue came out on, and, you know, it took the world by storm. And also, I really liked Pokemon Colosseum because it had that kind of mature element, which is seen in part in Pokemon Legends Arceus as well, but that was more in the linear progression pattern that you would see with a typical main series game up to that point, and that was fully fleshed out in 3D, although it did have limitations, that different kinds of limitations than we've seen in, you know, more of the recent generation of Pokemon titles that, you know, I haven't felt as deeply connected to. Next question up is from Justin C. He asks, which city course in MKT has been your favorite so far, including Singapore? And if you could travel to one of them, IRL, you haven't already been to, which would it be? Well, I've only been to New York. I'm in close proximity to New York City, and I do like New York in the game. It's very appropriate. Aesthetic, theme, vibe, the whole thing is very apropos for New York, but that's, in terms of the game itself, New York isn't my favorite city course. It's probably a toss-up between Berlin and Vancouver. I'd probably give a slight edge to Berlin as being my favorite city track in the game, and as which one I would like to visit the most, I'm not really much of a traveler. So what would I like to see the most? Well, you have to go with Paris, right? I mean, that's the landmarks, the history. That's, to me, that would be, you know, the one to see. But being that I've never flown before, and it kind of terrifies me to think about, like, okay, so I'm in North America, so that would leave, you know, Los Angeles and Vancouver. Both are beautiful. I'd love to visit both Vancouver and Los Angeles for different reasons. I think the city of Vancouver is just beautiful. I think that the nature also surrounding that area too is something that would really speak to me. But I mean, you gotta love LA, right? The weather and everything. So that would be really nice to visit as well. Next set of questions is from a turtle dude. He asks really good ones, so let's see what he's got this time. What's your general opinion on MKT trackers and tools? In particular, I'm thinking about the fine balance between optimization based on hard facts and the unpredictability of future items, courses, and buffs. This is something that I had discussed in part in the answer to ePointer before, in that, yes, in a lot of these trackers and tools, there's not concrete projections for futures on these items, but I do see that as being the future of how the Mario Kart Tour community can take the data-driven approach to the next level. It's going to have to happen, folks. But at this stage in time right now, I don't view that as so much of a shortcoming, since so much needs to be in place in order for that to become reasonable. Because it's like, okay, here on the channel, I've talked about the futures of these items, and I always make sure I'm very well studied and going to be like 100% accurate when delivering these value alerts, the projections that I have with these things, because I want to make sure that they're all hits, basically. You know, the ones that I have a little bit of doubt on, I'm going to, you know, be more cautious in my presentation of those items. And then, of course, there's the individualized component, which I always harp on here with the content. And I think that the pathway forward is, okay, one, we need to model out the futures based on the debut and the situation for which they're being brought into the game, because that does play a direct factor into its ultimate fully realized value. But then also, I do think that there's a way to really go next level with this, and that is to bring into account the track availability data. Now, this is the data that exists. Like, when was the last time we saw Yoshi's Circuit? When was the last time we saw Rock Mountain? These things are cycled in, and it's becoming increasingly more scarce over time as more variants and tracks are brought to Mario Kart Tour, because it's a slimmer slice of the pie to give exposure to those various tracks. But there's certain points where you have a track such as, Waluigi Pinball or Yoshi's Circuit or Rock Mountain has not been in so long. That's going to be coming in with a high probability. So this would require some math, and it would require some tracking in order to do this, to say that, with, a 95% certainty, this series of tracks will be brought in at this point in time. And then you can match that along with the graph of, like, when is the value going to come in, and then assess a probability that it will receive a variant for that. Like, you could go into all kinds of levels of speculation, and based on the timing of when that is, obviously the more forthcoming content would be more likely to be correct than more long-term projections on specifics anyway, not necessarily like the total fully realized state of the value there. But that's, in my mind, the ultimate stage where the community can get the data, and that would be just so enormously powerful for what it could do for players. Even if it was, look, something like that wouldn't be accurate all the time, and the point wouldn't be to be accurate all the time. It would just be to provide more information for players out there, so that you can say, like, I'm building my coverage and I'm lacking coverage in this area, but I'm not going to have the knee-jerk reaction and fill it in with this right now, because I want something newer that's going to have greater fully realized value, and then to find the items that are the greatest percentage to hit on those missing coverages. And that's what can really power your account forward. If you can be out in front with that, you're totally subverting, the model that they have, empowering your account forward to such an enormous degree. That would be extremely powerful. And now, in terms of, are there any particular functionalities that you would make use or recommend them more than you currently do? I think with everything, I'm very forthcoming with, what I'm looking at in the game experience, and, partitioning that out to the various demographics that tune in. The information. Part of what's difficult in conveying the content here is that, I am free to play, but as a free to play player who doesn't do much with their account, I've done a lot strategically with my account, but that involves also waiting, right? There's a lot of waiting. We've talked about that. Actually, your last question had something to do with that in the original Candid Kevin episode. But, in that time, I'm studying everybody else's experience, right? So I'm learning about, gold pass only and pay to win and these things, and trying to connect the dots, right? Because we're not playing different systems, as, I already said in this. And, what I do is, when I say something, I'm trying to convey it in a way where, the free to play can take meaning, the gold pass can take a different meaning, and the pay to win can take a different meaning. And then all of the full spectrum in between can find their place in things. And it's challenged, but it's a fun challenge, and I like doing that. But in terms of, there's nothing that I would recommend more in this moment than what I've already been recommending, because everything is specifically tailored to each moment in time and when I'm delivering it. I'm very conscious of that. So there's going to be content in the future that I come out with that's going to be putting more emphasis on something than it is currently, and there will be a reason for that. Everything has a reason, and there's a reason why I wouldn't be focusing on that as much in the given time now. So. And then also, I saw you had an addendum with an additional question, and that is, what's your favorite animal, and has your video games experience influenced that? Well, certainly, the primates are definitely at the top. That's top tier for me. Just, I like, things that, like, because when we're talking about connecting the dots here, right? You know, we're like what makes us human, right? Well, we're just animals, right? And then we turn to our closest living relatives, and they're not relatives to us. They're relatives to our mutual descendants, right? That's how, you know, evolution works. And you know, the similarities that we see there are just, you know, remarkable. And also, you know, the differences, right? But it's really, I tend to focus more on the similarities of what, you know, what ties us all together. Not just like in the us humans in this modern society, but, you know, what was life like for early humans, and, you know, by extension, you know, our ancestors as a species, you know, pre-human times. Like that, the scientific term is hominin species, right? When we originally diverged, and what life was like for, you know, that common ancestor, and, you know, the similarities that we share with that are really just apparent. So that's, you know, that's top tier in my book. But, you know, I'm fascinated by many and nearly all forms of life, really. Thinking back to actually my childhood, I really had a fascination for giraffes. I don't know, I think it was just the imagery that was seen in the National Geographic type you know, magazines and programs on TV. That actually, it reminds me, because I had a childhood misconception, which was really quite funny. It was very memorable to me. And National Geographic would run these ads for subscriptions for their magazine, and they would be like, you know, you can have it now for only $19.95. And I would think 1995 was the year, but it wasn't 1995 when the commercial was running. So that was like, you know, that blew my mind as a kid. But the giraffes, the imagery of that is just, I mean, they're really just majestic animals. And I wouldn't say gaming has had a huge influence on that. I would say more so that my interest in that has had an influence on my interest in gaming. I think that would be a fair assessment to make there. The next question up is from Isai, and he writes, what would be your ideal dream spotlight set or tour in Mario Kart Tour? Well, yeah, I've mentioned, you know, stuff with the Kongs and stuff, so let's get into a little bit more specifics about that, right? I could go two ways with it. I'll just be brief on it, but hopefully that will paint a clear and concise picture. The Diddy Kong alt. I would love to see a Diddy Kong alt, maybe something harkening back to Diddy Kong Racing. So like a Soda Jet. The Soda Jet bears a remarkable resemblance to the plane in Diddy Kong Racing, which is in part an inspiration for the gliding that exists in Mario Kart. So we should pay some homage to that. So a Soda Jet reskin in the same style of the Diddy Kong plane, and then the glider, you know, something themed according to such. And then, you know, if we're looking at Cranky Kong, most recently in Tropical Freeze, so definitely like he could be paired with either the Rambi Runner, or, you know, if we're looking at a new spotlight item, which would probably be ideal, and we know the folks out there love the massive size hitbox, so how about the Banana Master, but like an ice Banana Master and an ice Tropical Glider, right? Because it was Tropical Freeze that was the part of the plot with that game. So I think that would be really wicked, specifically looking at like a Cranky Kong set. So those would be my ideal selections there. Next question from Astral Gorilla. They say, hello Kevin, just want to say I'm a huge fan of your analytical driven data content for Mario Kart Tour. Your unique perspective to the game allows players to enjoy it in other ways than just following the meta observations and strategies. I mean, that means a lot, and that's a big part of why I do what I do in my approach, because when I was going through a lot of the same thoughts that you folks out there have had, you know, you're hearing like such and such is like the best driver, or like it's trash or no good or this or that. If you're doing stuff a different way, it's like, no, it's not. You can do just fine. You can be extremely successful. You can have a lot of fun too. having success doing it your way too. I mean, that's like the ultimate satisfaction, right? Is to have success and you did it your way. But look, there's nothing that we're trying to subvert with the metagame, because the metagame is the competitive development of what is optimal to do. And coming from my competitive background, I have nothing but appreciation for that, right? It's extremely beneficial to our understanding of the systems and whatnot. So definitely, I mean, it's one big puzzle, and we're putting it together. They don't give us much information about this game. It must be so intimidating if you're a new player. And I often think about that in the back of my mind, but it's hard to gear the dialogue of this game to new players when there's so many people that you're engaging with are existing players, and it's a balancing act. And I do try to keep those new players in the context of everything that I'm presenting here. That wasn't even the question though. So here's the question. It's were you drawn to the Donkey Kong franchise early on in your gaming life? And if so, what drew you specifically to those games? Art, music, etc. Are there any more recent Kong games that you've come to enjoy, or do you prefer the classics? Much love from the UK, Wales. Well, that was all very flattering that you said. And to get to the question, I'm not exactly the truest Kong fans in a sense, in that I haven't played the Donkey Kong Country series of games. I really haven't. I played DK64. I got into gaming late. It wasn't something I was really big on, like early childhood. Something I was introduced to a little bit later on. So DK64. And what was it? Jungle Beat with the bongos was a lot of fun, and that was the last Donkey Kong series game that I played. My exposure to Donkey Kong has been through the big one, Diddy Kong Racing. So that's Diddy Kong is a relative, of course, but that's a spin-off. Donkey Kong doesn't exist in that, but just being aware of his existence in that, and then that Donkey Kong existed in its competitor Mario Kart 64. So, and then Super Smash Brothers, the original one. So DK was involved in that. That was more or less where the interest in DK developed, and those characters kind of fell out of favor a bit. They peaked with Mario Kart Wii, but I peaked with this game in Mario Kart Double Dash. Just the aesthetic, the mechanics was just right for me. I mean, that was perfect. And it was, kind of on the heels of, Diddy Kong Racing. So introducing Diddy Kong into that just seemed like such a natural progression. And then, obviously they expanded to Funky Kong. Funky Kong largely dominated Mario Kart Wii, but Wii didn't have the same kind of nostalgia for me. Maybe that's because, I wasn't playing it as much with my friends like we were for Double Dash. So that all factors into it as well. But largely I was distant from the Mario Kart games. I did play Mario Kart 7, which only had DK, and I loved that game. The tracks were incredible for that. Many of them have been ported over to Tour, but it was lacking something with the characters and whatnot, and I didn't play that to very great depths. So, and then I never followed it up. Never played Mario Kart 8 or 8 Deluxe, because the roster, that definitely does factor into that, and that's something we talk a lot about here. So in terms of the influence, what's remarkable, just to speak to the value of this question, is the appreciation I've grown in. It's without having experienced those games in their original context, right? Donkey Kong Country on Super Nintendo, and what that soundtrack specifically did, aquatic ambience, was mind-blowing, and it completely shifted the paradigm of what was possible to put into a 16-bit cartridge or whatever, 32-bit cartridge. I don't recall exactly what it was at the time for that. So, but what they were able to accomplish from a technical feat, but also the artistic genius that went into it. I've seen videos on that, and it's remarkable. You know, David Wise, who was the soundtrack developer for Diddy Kong Racing, and it's no mistake that those tracks in Diddy Kong Racing share the same musical genius that was in the original Donkey Kong Country series. So I do have to credit the music a lot, and then the art, I would say, exists with the inspiration, and kind of going back to Super Rainiel's question, if it's not just like the representation, like, oh, here's a monkey in a game. No, it's just like the specific form of that, the characterization of that, the art direction of that, it does factor. You're definitely right on that. Next question from Milo AC asks, I wanted to know, how did you start in YouTube, as in how did you begin? By uploading a video and waiting for people to arrive, or sharing it on some places to attract interest? I arrived later, so I don't know how was the beginning. Yes, I guess in the original Candid Kevin, I did talk about what was my inspiration for starting it, but I don't think I went to the exact detail of like the ins and outs of like how it started. My ambition was never to become, you know, a YouTuber by trade. That's only sort of kind of developed as I've fine-tuned and honed my craft in being able to deliver this content to everyone. So that's had an influence. But in the beginning, the quality rests entirely with the ideas, because it's just like I look back and I'm like, wow, that was pretty rough, honestly. Just like, you know, the quality of things and whatnot. But it's like, you know, if you have an idea, people will take notice, and that's really what it was. You know, it started off, you know, I was a member of Cart Life. Still am a member of Cart Life. I recommend everybody else join Cart Life. Fantastic guy and wonderful community presence that he has. I mean, #1 guy, top guy in the community for sure. So I was a member in Cart Life, and I had asked Sammy if he would be interested in making a guide for free-to-play players, because so many things I was hearing about on YouTube were different from my experience, and I knew what they were saying was correct for their context. It was never like, these guys are all wrong, I got the right answer because it's different for me. No. I always had the awareness that it was different depending upon your situation in the game. It's in a way a sandbox game. Everybody has a unique situation, and the game plays out differently for everybody there. And I wanted to highlight that information. But I mean, it's not. He has, you know, friends that were free to play. I don't know if they're still actively playing, his friends that were free to play, but it's something that to deliver content, it's a large process, and I completely respect that. It wasn't something that he covered. I was willing to put together all the information, and I ultimately decided that, you know, after a few months of really fine-tuning my ideas, like honing them to really get to the bottom of, like, you know, what is the essential message here, and how does this stuff really work? Like, so we see differences, and some things are assessed just to chance and variance of events. It's a pattern, right? And it's discovering what's underneath the pattern and what's causing that, right? Like, what is the root cause? And then that's what we target here when we talk about all this stuff. So when I was comfortable with that, I brought the information forward. And the only place that I've ever really promoted myself has been within Cart Life, but always done respectfully within his liking and whatnot. And, you know, what really makes what Sammy does with Cart Life so enormous for the community is the way that he's able to support and lift up all of the other content creators, really. I mean, like, I don't know about every single person's situation, but it seems like anywhere you turn, Sammy is there in force, supporting every single one of them, or as many of them as he can possibly do within the kind of time that he has. It's really quite humbling. So there's no one out there like him, and massive amount of credit to Sammy D for my success, as well as knowing what he's done for so many other content creators out there as well. So, but part of that goes back to, you know, the ideas too, and you know, just building that overall knowledge. I view that as bigger than myself, and I lean on many other people in order to, really learn and understand all of that. It's not just, a lot of it is the reflection and the perspective that I am able to provide from it. But what I've seen, and it's really just a beautiful thing, is that, through the proliferation of this understanding, like the baseline understanding of the game, so many other people are having, they're able to reach conclusions that I'm reaching, and then it's like the level of dialogue has been completely transformed in such a remarkable way, and that's part of the movement. I'm not going to say I started it, because it's been going since the beginning of time. Look, I'm the beneficiary of all of my predecessors, right? Like I started watching, Abdallah, Go Shiny Hunter, Yoshi Bear, who's still around and kicking. He's doing great stuff still. I love Yoshi Bear's content. Those were the guys. And then, I came around to Cart Life later on, Shy Guy Cart, Stud Fit, among, many of the others that exist out there. But, it's through all of the work that they put in, I grew my understanding on the side, but it's being able to connect those things and take it to the next step. And I don't view myself as the end-all be-all for content, not in the slightest. And I mean, it's even my hope that someone takes what I say a step further, like I was discussing here with a turtle dude. If those kinds of advancements could be made in this game, that would be really remarkable. I think from a informational standpoint, like if that could be achieved, extraordinary. So I haven't really, I don't promote my content outside of Cart Life, and I'm very discreet with how I do it there. If it's not something that's like presentation or informational, I save it for my own circles of influence with that, and I spread by word of mouth. It's really the support that comes from all of you, the ideas, and has that restricted my growth in some way? Yeah, but it's like I said at the start, it's like I'm not made to be a YouTuber. I could go that route, but I prefer to do it the more wholesome way, because I get more out of it. I feel like we have something special here, and it leaves me speechless, honestly, to think about that. So enormously grateful for all of the support and the word of mouth. I know that there have been members like Apollo who've said that they've shared the content on Reddit, other places. I mean, that's really, I appreciate it so much, because that allows the ideas to proliferate. Every time when you just click like on the videos, I mean, that just helps within the YouTube algorithm, so that other people might be able to find this content, and then we see where things go from there. So next question from Jonathan Roth. Yay, congrats on 800. Thank you so much. I'd like to know two things. How could the devs make the team rallies more unique? Well, not having them is one thing, but it's like, okay, we have to have the team rally tours. And look, I'm not totally opposed to the team rally tours. I actually kind of like them in a way for a number of different reasons. I know some players share that opinion, because it's like it's a catch-up tour, so you're not falling behind. But I don't promote, the feeling the pressure and the need to keep up with aspects of the game as such. I don't think that they're very healthy. If you do, I don't speak ill against it, certainly. I just wish you luck and understanding of how to balance that with your own approach, because I don't want to see anybody get hurt. That's all it's about, because it can have an extremely negative impact. I read things on various servers and social media platforms, and when seeing how people are negatively affected by that, I'm like, no, I stand against that. So I want to make sure people are having the best experience possible when it comes to this, and that's what it's about. But how they can make the team rallies more unique? Well, actually, just plan a theme around it. Sergeant Spike had done this with the gaming tour. I don't recall when exactly I brought this up in the past, but he had drafted up an incredible mock-up design for this tour, the gaming tour. Bowser Jr. versus Diddy Kong, and they had like individual Joy-Cons that were themed. Like for Diddy Kong it was barrel-based, and for Bowser it was shell-based. And I mean, you could really go to town on it. Like imagine the tokens are different depending upon which team you clear. Like, oh, it's banana hits if you chose the Diddy Kong gaming team, or it's shell hits if you chose the Bowser. I mean, there's so many levels that could go into it. Like theming these characters, and think about how many people would want to pull if you had these specific themes, and like you'd have meaning, and actually like it would feel substantive to actually join one team or the other. So, I mean, those are just some ways that I see it improving. If an alt for a Kong would come to the game, how would you like to see it implemented? That is something I touched on in other questions. Entire spotlight set of high-ends, high-end driver, high-end cart, high-end glider, and for, you know, how the Kong, what form, like would you be disappointed if it was like Bubble or something? Like, you think you're trolling me? It's like, no, if they did a faithful representation of Bubble, like it should have 35 to 40 tracks in the game. Fantastic, I'm all in. I love those coverage warriors, you know that. On the flip side, you know, if they give it, you know, more limited track coverage, they better come packing the heat with, you know, Coinbox, Giant Banana. I mean, I don't like to invest in Coinbox because of how it displaces the niche of all these other characters that we may enjoy if you're playing for favoritism with certain characters. But, you know, if they ever want to see me invest in Coinbox, it's going to have to come on a Kong. Next question up is from the apartment. Not the most interesting question. Don't sell yourself short. What's your current, from your current inventory, which three, so one driver, one cart, and one glider, would you most like to have completely maxed out, triple uncapped? Sorry if you already have this complete inventory. No, that's nothing to be sorry about, actually. That's a good thing. Although, I guess it is sort of if your end game is complete, kind of like mine is for the comics, because they're all level 7 and triple capped. So which of those is my favorite? Well, Dixie Kong is my favorite character out of the ones that I have maxed out and triple capped. For the high ends, that is. But DK Jr. is the only one receiving value. So, you know, if I'm looking for excitement in the game in a future tour, all hope kind of rests on DK Jr. until they do something else there. So, in terms of the cart, the Rambi Runner, without question. I mean, that's been, that was basically like the driver, right? I personified the Rambi Runner as a driver. I don't really have a glider that's on that level. I mean, I've shown particular favoritism to the Dream Glider, and its current value is enormous. So, and that's probably the closest thing. I mean, otherwise the Swooper, but that was done more functionally for the daily selects. And same question, but what would be the three, including ones you don't have? Well, I mean, that's just it. It's not like, you know, I'm sitting here with, you know, a stack of rubies and saying like, I'm not gonna pull, even though I like that. No, honestly, I have everything that I could really possibly want in the game at this moment. And I was saying that before these things had value. Like back in the first anniversary tour, shortly after DK Jr. had been released, and he had no value, make no mistake. DK Jr. was a total meme. I used to make fun of him, and I would joke, I'd say someday he's gonna be my most powerful driver, not knowing the prophecy that actually would be fulfilled by that. But it just so happened that he ended up being the only one that was paywalled moving forward. Dixie Kong and Funky Kong have been given out for free. They're not giving them any more value. But back in like the first anniversary tour, I was saying like, I wouldn't trade all of the unknown Coinbox drivers in the world for my DK Jr., even though he was complete rubbish at the time, just because that was a driver I wanted, and I looked forward to playing with him on any track that I could. So I have absolutely everything that I could want in the game, and the only time that's going to change is when they introduce something new that fulfills that pre-existing criteria that I've created, and that's how I've risen above the gacha. They're not going to bait me. Look, a lot of these alts, they do a beautiful job with almost all the alts. I mean, there's a couple maybe here and there that don't look good, but most of the alts are very pretty, well designed, and I mean they're made to entice people to pull. But I'm not going to fall in with that, despite their best efforts. And then last but not least, we have King Ziad. big time supporter of the channel here. I can't thank you enough. Him in the apartment, always commenting on the videos. Thank you so much for the support of all the content here. It really means the world. And being that King Ziad, part of the global audience, that is always so humbling for me as well. You're one of the best, bro. Hope you reach 1K subs soon. Thank you very much for that. And my question is, what time do you predict the Kong will come this year? I'm going to go ahead and say the Kong is coming this year. There's no way they're going to go 2 years without one. They're developing that DK-based theme park. We have the Super Mario Bros. Movie coming out, that big Hollywood production. Cranky Kong is in that. They already brought Kamek to the game, and he's going to be a supporting character in that, just the way Cranky Kong is. And I see that coming around May 2022 this year. So that's when I think it's going to happen. But it might not be Cranky Kong. They might save that for another time. Who knows? It's not. I don't have a crystal ball on this, folks. That's just, you know, he seems like the most likely. If you're going to say any kind of a Kong alt versus Cranky Kong, honestly, it seems like Cranky Kong is the most marketable for them, so it would make the most sense, and it would also be the most attractive for me in a way. I don't know. Diddy Kong has been receiving those middle shelf value buffs. I've brought emphasis to. I've written so much support over the last year about that. We've seen that come to fruition in a way, and I really was very respectful and professional in the way that I was doing that and conveying the importance that these characters mean to people and what the absence of that support has meant in a negative sense, but creating the positive spin on like what they could make from their game. And just to give that character one thing would be remarkable. So, I mean, perhaps we could see an alt for him. It'd probably be easier to make an alt for Diddy Kong since he does have clothing, and that could be easier to theme towards something else than, you know, perhaps Donkey Kong, which some people feel like Donkey Kong might never get an alt because he's just got a tie and nothing else. But yeah, I think May is that time of year. That's when we had the Jungle Tour originally. That's when we had the Bowser vs. DK Tour. Unfortunately, no new character. Had the Rambi runner then, so I think that we're all waiting until then. If something happens before then, it's a miracle. We'll be excited. So thank you so much, everyone, for all the questions. A lot of fun, very long, engaging, but remarkable questions. And the interaction that is generated from this always takes the content to the next level. As I'm doing this, I think like, wow, this is like, you know, the next great piece of content that, you know, I haven't had the time to fully develop. It all goes into this. So in some respects, this is the greatest piece of Mario Kart Tour content and context I can provide, because it really cuts deep to some of these fundamental things that we all experience in the game in just different ways. So take care, everybody. There will be another Candid Kevin episode when we hit 900. So as always, please do share your support, drop a like on this video, and subscribe if you haven't. It really goes a long way in helping to create more Mario Kart Tour content. Take care, everybody.